Hi, I'm Hugh O'Conor. I was the series director on 20 Shots of Opera with Irish National Opera, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we filmed them and some of the technical aspects. It was logistically quite a ambitious project to try and pull off, and I'm still kind of amazed that we did it. But it was a really beautiful thing to be involved with, and I think everybody just gave so much of themselves. We were 6 months into the pandemic, and I think we were all just really grateful to be working together on something that was very ambitious in its own right. So we were kind of making it up as we went along, but then that was part of the fun of it. So I've just been asked to talk a little bit about a couple of them, and there's nothing film geeks like me like more than rabbiting on about how they made stuff. So let's do it. And just a thanks to Fergus and Diego from Irish National Opera for getting me involved in the first place. So when Fergus contacted me, he explained that they had been planning to do an opera in the Gaiety and they had booked the space and the time for rehearsals in Artane where they usually rehearse. But because of COVID, they now weren't going to be able to do it. So he was very creative in terms of what he decided to do, and he commissioned 20 short operas to be filmed on the stage of the Gaiety, 10 female composers, 10 male composers, and then the plan was to shoot over 10 days, 2 operas a day, and that's when he got in touch with me and I said, "You're crazy." But it was exciting. And we had an amazing team who I'll talk about, and we sort of set about doing it. The opera we're looking at now, Her Name, I think is an interesting example of some of the advantages that filming as opposed to staging an opera gave us. We were able to rehearse the 20 operas over 4 weeks in Artane, so each of the directors had a couple of sessions per opera, and I was sort of overseeing all of them and directing a couple of them myself. So Her Name, I got to rehearse with Sean Hayden, the singer, and with the composer Alex Dowling over a couple of weeks, and as you'll see here, I was able to shoot the rehearsals as well. So I cut together myself a version of the opera that ran about 4 minutes at the time, and was able to show it back to Sean in the room, and we could kind of talk it through a little bit, because this was one of the operas that I sort of thought that maybe we didn't need to do on the stage. It was more interesting if we actually shot in the Gaiety itself, sort of making it look like it was school and then eventually coming to a church type sort of scenario. The team we had working with us was a really amazing group of people. Katie Davenport was the costume designer, Paul Keoghan, the lighting designer, Sarah Bacon, the production designer, and Hugh Challoner was working with me filming and editing. And I shot second camera sometimes myself. Blatt Garcia was our Steadicam operator. Well, it wasn't a Steadicam, it was a Ronin, but it's sort of close enough. And he shot the beautiful movements in this opera. In some of the music videos I've worked on in the past, we've used a technique that slows down the speed of singing but still works in the track itself, which is always quite complicated to explain to people, and I still don't totally understand what I'm talking about. But basically it means that the singer on the day has to lip sync to a sped up version of the track to 150%. So it's kind of singing very fast and singing like this, and everybody's laughing and it's ridiculous. But if you can take it seriously and try and think that it's going to work, it gives this sort of dreamlike effect when you play it back. So you shoot in slow motion, you shoot at 50 frames per second. Normal playback is 25 frames per second. You then ramp up to 37.5 frames per second because 50 frames per second is a little bit too slow. It's a little bit too noticeably slow-mo, whereas in between the two, it's 150% sped up the track. But when you play it back, it all sort of magically works. So as you can see in the test footage, it was getting Sean used to singing at a slightly sped up speed and then knowing it would work in the end, we hoped. The music was conducted beautifully by Elaine Kelly. The libretto by Mark O'Halloran is heartbreaking, and Sean really gives a beautiful performance. The composer and librettist Robert Coleman was inspired for his opera The Colour Green by the environmentalist Mark Boyle, whose book The Way Home, Tales from a Life Without Technology, deals with him living without money or electricity for almost 15 years.
With all the editing tools like copy and paste and delete and so on. And so this book's been written by hand. I actually had to make a copy. It took me 2 months to make a copy of the book.
Robert used some of the audio from this short documentary, but we needed to find a different way of visually representing the music on screen. I asked Robert if he had any visuals that we could work with, and he thought of a photo that had been taken of him at an audio festival in Spain, which he sent on. I'd been working on a short animation film for a few years, so I had some experience in animation, and I wondered if this could be a good way of telling the story. And I reached out to a really talented young animator called Holly Keating, who's based in Cork. And we looked through all the footage from the documentary and talked about Mark's book and what Robert had been trying to achieve with his music. And we slowly came up with a visual style, cutting between the photo of Robert at the festival listening to music and being inspired, and then the visuals of Mark through the documentary, which Holly then recreated in an animated form. And it seemed to really work together nicely. I just want to give a big shout out to Colin Durham, who did all the title and graphic design work. We wanted to try and do something different for each opera, and he came up with so many creative solutions. But Message from Marty by Conor Mitchell, what can you say? Emma Nash, who is also credited as camera operator, and Carolyn Dobbin, they're both incredible in this. I think Conor based it on a TikTok video or something that he saw, a sort of challenge video with a lady giving out to an ex on behalf of her sister, and I think that's where it sort of came from. And talking to Davy Keller about it, we spoke about could it be possible to do it on a phone, and we decided why not. So Davy filmed it on his, or practiced with his phone, and Emma in rehearsals shot with it. I think there's 3 or 4 disguised cuts in the various sections just to get through, but it works really well, and they're both incredible in it. I think we all got a bit of a kick out of shooting it in the Maureen Potter dressing room in the Gaiety. I don't think it's ever been used quite like this before. The music is conducted beautifully by Fergus Shiel. I got to see Abomination, a DUP opera by Conor in the Abbey last year, and he's really such an original talent. It's so exciting to see what he'll do next, and this really was one of our favourite ones to work on. I had to include this clip of Dust by Benedict Schlepper Connolly. It's directed by Stephanie Dufresne and sung by Michelle O'Rourke. Black Garcia shot this and also shot the behind the scenes shot that he sent us on. It just sort of shows how much work goes into getting a one shot like this, which was the climactic part of the piece. And I think we did this take about 18 times before we finally got it. But it was worth it. That's it. Thanks to everyone at Irish National Opera. A special shout out to Kate Watkins and Paula Tierney, our amazing stage managers, and to our entire crew, who were so great to work with. And thanks again. I hope it was some use and I wasn't waffling on for too long.